Hello, and welcome once again to Global Spotlight. I truly hope you have enjoyed the month of May because it's gone, and now we're halfway through the year already. We're into the month of June. I am so grateful that some nice sunshine weather is here and we're able to go outside without all of the heavy coats and sweaters. And I hope you're enjoying it too. So now, for this evening, we're going to have a very, very interesting guest. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Pastor Stephanie Jefferson, and I will be your host. Oh, I tell you, I'm really looking forward to tonight because we're going to be talking about first responders. And in this country, you know how important that subject is. And my guest this evening is Lieutenant Colonel Bob Coulombe. Praise God. I'm so glad he could take time out from his busy schedule to be here with us. So sit back and enjoy First Responders here at Global Spotlight. Thank you. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Welcome.
It's a pleasure to be here.
I tell you, it's a pleasure to be here. Coming in out of the beautiful weather, coming into the studio. It was such a lovely day today.
Well, I'm grateful for the invitation. The subject matter hopefully will be of significant interest to your audience. And we're going to wander around a very interesting subject. First responders takes on a lot of meaning, a lot of dimension.
Would you please share with our viewers what are the first responders? I hear it all the time.
Well, the classic definition would include the most common sense ones, which would be your police, your fire, and your emergency services. Your volunteer ambulance corps in some areas or paid service in other areas. And that's the civilian side of first responders.
Oh.
Behind some of those doors, there are also specialists that come from areas like Homeland Security,
Okay.
areas like the FBI, and the military. And that's not often seen in your local news stories when there's something that occurs that's not way out of the ordinary, because going on an ambulance call to a home on 144th Street or whatever is not the kind of thing that draws that attention.
Yes.
But the broad issue of what first responders are trying to manage includes all of the more devastating things that can occur. Certainly, very recently was the event that occurred in Virginia.
Yes.
And that simple thing, when you think about it, of a man discontent, losing control, and decides to go to his place of work, his employment, and basically attack people.
Yes.
There's no way that you can design a system that's going to effectively stop that. But if you noticed in the evolution of the news stories, all of the services that got involved.
Yes, they did.
And those services included pastors, and ministers to administer to the care of the people who survived,
Yes, they did.
and
They
having
stepped
to
up.
deal with incredible shock, pain, the dissolution of their family as it was, which happened literally instantaneously. You also are dealing with the science of trying to measure and understand all of that event so that you can, from it, present to the first responders lessons learned, and therefore for them to give to their communities those lessons learned and try to stop or at least prevent as much carnage
Yes.
as might occur. Huge, difficult, complex issue, but we work at it, we being this large family of first responders, very assiduously, with the purpose being that we can distill all that we've learned and bring it to you, the minister, to share with your congregation, or the school management, superintendents and principals and teachers, and a whole variety of avenues that we try to open to share our knowledge and stop that bad issue from being as bad. Amazing stuff.
I
Amazing
see.
stuff.
Because this is really it's totally out of hand. But what I had wanted to ask you was, I would like for you to share with our viewers a little bit about your military history, so that way we see how it coordinates with you becoming a first responder.
Sure. The simple version of my military history is that I enlisted as virtually any eligible person in this country, man or woman, can go to a recruiter if they so choose and enlist in a branch of the service.
Okay.
That used to be, once upon a time, when I was a young man, that you could be drafted, and there are still countries where you have mandatory service. That's no longer existent here, but you can go into the military. When you do that, essentially what you're doing is you're putting yourself into a whole new culture. You don't understand it until you get in, and it will change the way you are by virtue of the way they train you and indoctrinate you. And what they're trying to do, essentially, is take some of the civilian out of you, and maybe some of the bad habit and the poor practices that you may have, not for everyone, but for some, and create a discipline that works within the structure of the military, and that creates its efficiency.
Yes.
All right, so you're no longer a young kid. You become a man or a woman who has grown up by virtue of the system. Now, what does that bring in terms of the world of the first responder is the fact that the military is a community no different than this community where the school is located. There are families, there are men and women and children, and although some of the military may be sent to another place where it's a hostile environment,
Yes.
that's part of the job. And so when you're there, nothing has gone away from your family. They're still home, and they're still doing things, and their kids are still growing, and they're exposed to pressures that are not ordinary to most in the environment of this country, except for the first responders. Okay?
see.
That's the critical thing. So let's just create two roads. And in this road, we have a young Marine, and in this road, we have a young police officer.
Yes.
And the Marine goes to Afghanistan, and when he's there, the enemy attacks him and his unit. And in the process of doing that, weaponry is used and munitions are used and bombs are exploded and people get hurt and people die.
Yes.
Okay? Meanwhile, the police officer in his community goes forward on his job with his people, and the same thing happens. Maybe not as grandiose in the sense of airplanes dropping bombs and all the rest of that, but not a heck of a lot different.
Yes.
And they both, that young Marine and that young police officer, endure exposures to things that you cannot teach. You cannot take it from the book, a book. You have to bring that into your soul and into your heart, because the person next to you has just been hurt. The police officer who went in to the building who was shot was hurt. And the three other guys had a job to do to stop the bad guy, and also immediately started worrying about their comrade. No different to the Marine. And at the end of that mission, when you come back and you have the opportunity to decompress, whether you're in the mountains of Afghanistan or you're in Virginia Beach, the process is no different. My friend got hurt. My friend got killed. That pains me to the core of my soul.
Yes.
And no matter how well I'm trained, I am not inured to any of that. So the first responder, the Marine, leaves the Marine Corps. He's done his duty, and he goes home back to his family. So what does he have to do? Well, he has to reassimilate, because that environment is not ordinary, and then ask himself, what does he want to do? And he may become a fireman, a medic, or a police officer. If he does that, he's just made a transition from one department to another. And all of that training and all of that exposure and all of that soul searching comes with him and helps create in him the first responder that he is. So for me, my exposure in the military brought me to trainings which I would never have thought of. I carry this little badge on my uniform here,
Yes.
and it's called a MEMS badge. That's the military acronym for Master Emergency Management Specialist, 300 hours of training. And from that, I gained special skills, which when I came home and involved myself in my ambulance service as a volunteer, I brought that skill set with me.
Yes.
Okay? And that's not uncommon in the transition and interaction of the services. On the other hand, while I was still wearing the uniform actively, because I am retired, I was on a joint task force for counterterrorism in the state of New York. That joint task force was made up of components of the Air Force, the Army, the Navy, Coast Guard, and police, fire, EMS, FBI, Homeland Security. That was a team. And the intellectual capabilities of all of those wonderful people sat in a room, and we gathered information from all kinds of sources to help us best prepare to protect our state against the eventualities which have occurred. Now, in context to all of that, you could say, well, you didn't stop 9/11. You're absolutely right. And there are a whole bunch of things that we didn't stop. And there are many, many more that we did. It is not a certainty that this intellectual gathering has all the answers. They are not a panacea, but they are remarkably well-dedicated professionals who give all that they have to save that one life that they can.
Exactly.
And painful as it is, that we understand that it's very hard for me to tell that there's some young man on this campus at this school who is disgruntled, like that fellow working at that site in Virginia Beach,
Yes.
or some guy going to the Parkland nightclub because he didn't like gays and he wanted to destroy them.
Yes.
You can't manage all of those things. You just don't know what's going to happen, but you try as best you can. Now, that's where in our training we bring what we learn as best as we know how to the general population, your viewers, for example,
Yes.
and we say, okay, we need you. Now, in your heart, you would say, sure, I want to help you, but I don't know how. So the phrase today of see something, say something.
That's what I was
all right,
thinking about.
absolutely resonates.
Yes.
Resonates. However, I think sometimes that we being me and the people I'm involved with, have not done a very good job of is teaching you how to say something and what are you looking for.
Yes.
Okay? It's not that simple. So I'm going to share a story with you.
Please
all right?
do.
Because it's a true story. And the reason that I know it personally is because it's about me.
Okay.
And I'm on my way to Florida. This was maybe 3 or 4 months ago now. And I'm waiting to board the plane at LaGuardia. And I'm standing there, and a bunch of people are all waiting for the boarding announcements to come on. And I see these two young men standing just a bit away from the gate where you first go in, maybe 5 feet apart. And they catch my eye. Something is not ordinary. So they're 5 feet apart. The one young man has a backpack on, and just behind him is this other young man on a cell phone. So I start watching. And they never move. They don't look around. There's no composure to what's around them. The kid on the phone never gets off the phone, and the other guy is immobile. Now, I'm watching this for at least 5 or more minutes. I didn't time it, but if you said 10, that wouldn't surprise me because it was just about ready to start. And I said, something's wrong here. So I go to the desk and I asked to speak to the supervisor. And I said, could you direct me to the supervisor? And this woman always says, how can I help you? And I said, well, I show her my identification, say who I am, and how I'm concerned about what I'm seeing.
Yes.
And I said, what are your protocols? And she said, well, we don't have any. I said, okay, then I want to see a policeman.
Right.
And she says, well, we're getting ready to board, and we just can't do that right now. So she is basically telling me she doesn't want to delay boarding because it costs a lot of money to hold up a flight and not fly and all that stuff. And I'm tracking that for her perspective, but it wasn't working for me. So I said, well, we have 2 choices here. Either you call the police or I will. So he said, well, let me speak to the captain. I said, fine. So she goes to the cockpit. She comes out and brings me to the captain. So I, again, go through the whole issue, and I show my identification. And he says, well, Bob, he said, we have a marshal, air marshal on board. And so I said, okay, that's terrific. So they call him off the plane, and I'm now speaking to him. He's asked me to point out where they are in the plane unobtrusively. So as I walk by the seats, I tap the back of the seat where the 2 kids are sitting, and he sets himself right behind the 2 kids. Off we go to Florida. Now, we land, and by pure coincidence, I'm going down the escalator to the baggage claim. These 2 kids are in front of me. So I said, hey, how'd you enjoy the flight, yada, yada. They don't even acknowledge me, never mind respond to my conversation at all. It's okay. Well, as they get off the escalator, they go right out the building, no baggage check, no nothing. Well, that bothers me. So I go to TSA again, and I said, this is what I saw. They went right out the building, no luggage, no nothing. It's very odd that they flew down from New York to Florida with nothing but one backpack. And so I just wanted to report that the original issue was at the airport, air marshals were advised, and so forth and so on. And I know that in New York, the air marshal is going to the database that the FBI had as to whether or not these two kids showed up on their radar screen.
Yes.
Okay. So the report is given, I'm on my way, and I said, by the way, I want a report back on what you find. I need to know, because I'm going to report this back to New York for my own people. Okay? And they said, absolutely, no problem. So when I get 3 weeks later, I get the feedback, and these two guys went to a known location by the FBI, and they were basically scouting a potential mission for these terrorists. So with that, they were arrested, the cell was broken down and cleaned out, and see something, say something worked.
Wow.
Now, put the other people that were sitting in that area waiting to board, would they have known to do that?
No,
Absolutely not.
they would
Okay?
not.
And so that's when it dawned on me that as hard as we've tried, we've really not communicated very effectively with those who are not trained. I could have told that same story to a cop like the air marshal. You knew exactly what I was talking about. Okay, that was an easy conversation. But the person sitting waiting to go get seat 22A or B didn't even see those kids, never mind
Yes.
being mindful of some unusual activity.
That's right.
So that harkens back to how many times have we read storylines after the event of the track record of this kid, whomever it was, having some behavior issues that had we known more, we could have acted more aggressively
Right.
and stopped that kid from getting out. Forget all the stuff about buying guns and all that. Bad guys can get whatever they want. All it
Yes,
takes
they
is money.
can.
All it takes
Yes,
is
they
money.
can.
Okay, so you can try to curtail the opportunity, but I'll take you to 42nd Street to the bus station right now and buy you anything you want.
That's right. Yes.
So,
So true.
so lessons were, learned.
But do you think it would be advantageous to start educating the young people in the high schools? Because
All
young
right.
people have a tendency to be,
Sure.
you know,
The difficulty that we have contemporaneously today, for example, March 15th, we convened, we being myself and some other folks from InfraGard, which is an organization that is partnered with the FBI and Homeland Security on infrastructure protection. We put together a master class for active shooting. And we had professionals we had 154 attendees, so the interest level was very, very high. And all kinds of people from hospitals, from transportation companies, from banks, not just first responders and not just military or cops. And that. We had a really diverse group of people.
yes.
And one of the things that came out of that, I'll give a quote, two of them. One was made by a captain of a sheriff's department when he said, I walked into this place today thinking that we really had our act together. I'm leaving here realizing that we have a long, long way to go.
Yes.
That came from give and take of all these people over 2 hours of conversation with expert panel. The other guy was an undersheriff, that's equivalent of a chief of police, and he said, how can we accomplish our goals if they won't listen? And what he was speaking to is two experiences that I had and then expand it. Experience number one, a pastor of a church in Westchester County, totally lovely person, said to me, yes, Bob, we brought in experts to do a threat assessment. And amongst the things they said to do, I can't do. Why not,
Oh, why
Pastor?
not?
Because my congregation won't let me.
Oh,
So the congregants are saying, no, you're not going to do that in our church. That's not why we're coming here. We're coming here to participate in the service and speak to our God and do our service. And we're not going to have that interrupted by this kind of structuring. Echoes, superintendent of a school system. Bob, we had a threat assessment. They went through the entire facility. The budget for that was going to run me $2.1 million.
yes.
Whole different problem. I don't have that kind of money. Also, I couldn't do that. Why not? Dr. So-and-so. Well, my parents don't want to have their children terrified by doing these things. So they
don't
won't let me.
But don't they see that these terrorists pick all these soft targets? That seems
might
like
be-
to me
that-
to be the
Pastor, that's the frustration of the first responder community uniformly around this country.
yes.
Okay, it's not just in Westchester or the Bronx.
No.
There are here in this area in the Bronx as well as in Westchester those who do become proactive, but they're the minority.
I can see it because it seems like these I call them terrorist bullies.
Yeah,
They target soft
targets,
targets,
of course.
people who are just so laid back, they're not
Sure.
paying attention.
Sure. And the flip side of the coin is that that congregation, I'm sorry, that pastor and that
Yes.
superintendent, if they could, would do what was recommended by the professionals.
Okay.
Okay? They couldn't for
The
the reason that who's wagging the tail or the dog?
That's it. Hello.
Okay? If the congregation says no,
Then it's
and
no.
I say, well, I'm going to do it anyway, they're going to fire you.
That's right.
So you can't impose on these. So the education process that we have employed so far is not working. So we have to find new ways for us to be able to speak to those parents of those kids and to the congregation in that church, so
Yes.
that whatever their ideas are, their preconceived notions are,
Right.
can be addressed and allay those fears and concerns.
Exactly.
Okay?
Could I interrupt you just a moment
Sure.
to say, it seems like to me, just listening to you right now, is that the terrorists have the upper hand because they know that the majority of the masses are very laid back. They know that. So they have the element of surprise on their side.
Well, the operative word that you used a few moments ago, Pastor, was soft target. And so if you're in charge of the building where this disgruntled employee walked in, how do you put in place protections against a guy who has the pass to enter the building? Okay? I have the president of a hospital in Westchester County said, Bob, I have 32 doors to all of the buildings in my hospital. How do I stop them from coming in?
Yes.
And it's not just that you give them a little keypad that they can pop into the door. You're not dealing with an empty chair with the bad guy.
Yes.
Okay? They're not idiots.
No.
So when you put in the system and it costs a heck of a lot of money, how easy is it bridged?
Yes.
Okay? So if you negate 29 of those 32 doors, you say, okay, you can only come in by 3 doors.
Yes.
Does that solve your problem?
No.
Well, wait a minute. I don't know. It could. However, this is a hospital. And he said to me, Bob, you try telling these doctors
Yes.
that they can only come in 2 doors.
Yes.
All right? When they've got to walk a half a mile from the parking lot in the rain to get in one of the 2 doors.
Yes.
It's just not going to happen.
It's not.
So the idea was a fundamentally good one in terms of the objection, the object of the question, but it's not the solution. So what do we do next? Okay, really scary, really hard stuff. Okay,
Yes.
and then again in that same gathering of these people is training. One of the best trained military units in the world are our Navy SEALs.
Yes.
Why? First of all, they train literally every day. Every day. They're doing something. Conditioned, well-conditioned, superbly trained, technologically very savvy. And what they have is muscle memory. They're so used to doing that particular set of motions, it's instantaneous. Now think about it. Well, you take the volunteer fire department in Croton, the town that I live in now, okay, and say, Chief, how often do you guys train with the PD and the EMS? And the answer is, well, we do 2 or 3 a year. Now, that's laudatory in the sense that they're volunteers. And these guys are working and coming home, and they have a one night a week that they go to the building. So you try having them train at a sophisticated level, dealing with a series of complex problems. They'll do it once,
Yes.
but they don't have the muscle memory.
That's
That
right.
3 days later, the event could happen in real life. The guys who trained may not be in town that day.
That's right.
Okay?
Yes.
So, again, it's a complaint amongst these people that we don't train enough. But how can you when I was in the military as a colonel and I said to my people, we're going to train today, there was no question. Okay? You will train today, people. And
That's right.
Sergeant Brown sitting over there at his desk is told, go, hey, Sergeant, let's get this thing ready to go. Okay?
Exactly.
That's how we did it.
Yes.
Well, the chief of police can say that because his organization is paid. All you got to do is pay overtime. Paid services can train more efficiently because they're there. You have a captured audience. The volunteer guys are not unwilling. They're just not there.
Exactly.
Okay? So that creates a problem. And then you get into a complex situation. What breaks down? Communications. Why? Because it's not intuitive in you how to say things. Here's another anecdotal thing about the massacre that occurred in Vegas. All right? Now, this guy,
That was
I mean,
terrible.
the volume of people is just mind-blowing. But all those people who were shot, all those people who killed, whatever, the immediate activity in that pen where all these people were sequestered was to get the hurt people to help. So what did they want? They went to Siri and their cell phones, and they said, where's the nearest hospital? Boom, 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 boom. Up shows A hospital, and then B hospital, and then C hospital.
Yes.
A hospital is the first one I'm going to because it's the closest to where I am.
Right.
And the next one was maybe a half mile away, and the other one was 6 miles away.
Yes.
Okay? The first hospital was a community hospital. One doctor on duty in the ER because it's not a level 1 trauma center. They're not there 24/7. The next one was 1 grade up, and where all the EMS people coming in, the ambulance guys knew to go, was the level 1 trauma center 6 miles away. But Joe and John, and Joe's putting John in the back of his truck because he's bleeding out,
Right.
and drives to the closest one.
Exactly.
Well, they all go in there. So you got 200 people coming
Yes.
to one doctor.
Exactly.
Wow. it never occurred
This is
in the
this is-
management of that
it's
event.
such a multifaceted
Absolutely.
problem. Oh my gosh.
And I was at a briefing on that by one of the ER doctors who was on duty at the second hospital. Stuff you would never think about. They ran out of equipment,
Oh my gosh.
supplies. Why? Because an ordinary day, they may have 5 or 6 people come in, most without serious life-threatening injury. Now all of a sudden, you're trying to stop bullet wounds, which create a whole hell of a lot of problem on the person who is wounded, and they're trying to use supplies to mitigate those problems and save that life, and they run out. What do you do now?
Gosh. It seems like to me the United States has to put in place a whole new mindset or a new paradigm.
Can I share with you another story
Sure.
about mindset?
Uh-huh.
And it was made, I was attending I was actually an evaluator of a training in Philadelphia. And it was SWAT guys going in to interdict an active shooter. That was the training. But we brought to that event a team of Israelis.
Yes.
And anyone who knows about Israelis and what they're capable of doing,
Yes.
you know, they're under attack year round.
That's
And so
right.
their Mossad is
So
like the Navy SEALs.
Right.
And they were there to teach these SWAT guys in Philadelphia. Okay. After the whole training and everything, the guy who ran that is a consultant to Homeland Security by the name of Ari Richmond. And Ari's having dinner with us, and he says, all right, I'm going to tell you a story about, he was a Mossad operative, then he became chief of police in Jerusalem. And then after he retired from that, he was hired to consult with Homeland Security. Highly trained guy.
Yes.
So he said, okay, he said, here's on this given day what had happened in my city, his city being Jerusalem. And he said, a bus pulls up to the bus stop, and there's a line of people, a queue of people waiting to get on board. Women bus drivers watching the people get on board and distribute their coupon into the collection box or what the heck ever the process is. And he says, as the line is just about done, the very last person she notices is a Hasid, which is an Orthodox Jewish person. Now, the Hasids dress in a very particular way,
Yes.
and it's uniform, period. That's how they dress. They have the locks and all of these other accoutrements, and she sees that. And as he gets to the door, she pulls her revolver and shoots him right in the head.
Oh my gosh.
He was not a Hasid. He was a bomber, suicide bomber. And she realized when he got close enough that he was wearing sneakers.
Yes.
Hasids do not wear sneakers.
Okay.
And so she realized that this was a bad guy and had the authority to take him out. She shot him and then she moved the bus
Hello.
just in case he detonated so he didn't kill all the people on the bus.
That's right.
All right? Now,
Yes.
he said, try doing that on Fifth Avenue. And the answer is, of course, it would never happen. And
Never
he said,
happened. Yes.
the difference is that we have learned our lessons in blood, and you have not.
Amen.
Okay?
Yeah.
And as profound as that statement was,
So
that was
true.
almost 10 years ago that I had that dinner with him. And as we fast forward to today, what
Yes.
terrifies the daylights out of me is how much we haven't learned.
Amen.
Okay? We have learned a lot. We have
Yes,
worked
but-
very hard. But
But
today, to have a superintendent say to me, we can't scare our kids, or a pastor say to me, my congregation will not let me strengthen the
The security,
protections in my
yeah.
sacristy, just,
doesn't
I
make
can't
sense.
comprehend it.
That's it.
Okay, I can't comprehend it.
No.
But you keep going.
Uh-huh.
You know, you keep going. But
it.
that's, so, all the way through to where I am today began when I started my first trainings in the military.
Yes.
And as I went up in rank and I got more involved and I got better trained within the divisions of my own base and my own military units, to now joining forces with civilians and military from the different branches, and all of us having had different experiences and exposures, and
Come it
amalgamating that together
Yes.
was a remarkable, remarkable accomplishment,
Yes.
and it gave me incredible insight and the opportunity to take those messages and bring them out, which is what we're doing basically today again in its own way,
Yes.
to be mindful and don't be afraid. You know, don't be afraid. What I did not have was the fear at that airport that I'd make a fool of myself.
Yes.
I wanted to be wrong.
Yes.
Okay, that's a good thing.
Uh-huh.
But, and by the way, the police who checked this out also want it to be wrong.
Yes.
And then when they do that, two things happen. One, there is no issue that has to be diffused. And two, they've had a practice session. So that
On
means
the
their
job.
skill sets get better.
That's right.
Okay? So that's a win-win for the cops.
Yes.
And the person who did that has nothing to be embarrassed about,
No.
you know, but we're afraid to do that.
Oh,
We don't
yes.
want to be caught and say, what's the
No.
matter? And by the way, it will happen, and I've seen this happen, where the cop checking the bag unattended on the platform at the subway gets angry
Yes.
because somebody reported it. Now he's got to go through a whole rigmarole. And if it turns out to be benign, he still has to do the paperwork and write the
Yes.
report and all of that, and he gets angry. All right? That's a misstep. Human, but a misstep.
Yes.
Because his sergeant and his lieutenant know that he had to go through all of that, and he
Right.
learned something. And by the way, he went home that night to his family. Okay?
Exactly.
So, you know,
Exactly. But it's better to be, to go through the paperwork and so forth and
well, that's my
having
view.
followed
That's
through
my view, sure.
because
Absolutely.
it just might have went the other way.
That's, again, these people, you know, the three words that we teach in a training where we're going to have some kind of an event, whether it's an IED or a suicide bomb or whatever, there are three words that are a mantra, and that's primary, secondary, and tertiary.
What does
Okay?
that mean?
The simplicity is that the bad guy, more often than not, if they can, will have the first guy go in. That's the suicide bomber, for example, or the guy with the backpack that puts it into the trash can and it goes boom. The second thing is that now the first responders are coming in and they're beginning to set up their operations. So they'll put a bomb in that area so that they can hit the first responders. Boom. Meanwhile, there's another issue where the third bomb goes off in another part of the city. And that takes all of the assets away from dealing with the ones who got hurt by the first guy. Primary, secondary, tertiary.
Could you please say that again?
Sure. Primary,
Yes.
first guy. Secondary, the people
The
coming in to
primary
help.
is the first
That's
guy.
the first guy.
who
He's going to
set
go
off
to
the first
kill all the
bomb.
people and we'll just make it up. He's going to go into Grand Central Station and blow himself up. Now you got casualties all over the place. That was the primary.
Oh.
EMS is coming in, fire's
was
coming in,
first
police,
responders
they're
are
all
all
coming
coming
in.
in.
And so some guy is on Park Avenue and he puts another bomb in a garbage can right by where all of the fire apparatus is going to park, and those guys are going to get hit. Meanwhile, the third guy goes down to the Port Authority and kicks off the third one so that the resources that need to be used at Grand Central are
pretty-
taken to another place.
Isn't that diabolical?
Diabolical is an absolutely correct word. It's insidious, okay? And we worry about that all the time. And I
My
guarantee you
Lord.
that when those police went in Virginia Beach, while they were assessing the issue that they had just been confronting, that shootout,
Yes.
there were other teams going all around checking for the possibility of secondary and tertiary. That's
Oh
an
my
SOP,
gosh.
standard operating procedure. They don't
You
always
know
do
what
it.
just popped in my mind too?
I don't know.
Are the copycatters too?
Of course, where do you think these young kids learn these things from? There's been an evolution in how we are assaulted in this country.
Oh
And if
my
you just think
word.
back 10 years ago, you never heard about the words lone wolf, the kid.
No.
It was always some Al Qaeda, some Middle East, some uh,
Yes.
Muslim oriented
Yes.
terrorist group
Yes.
coming in and
All
raising
the
havoc.
you have the
But
radical
what began to
Muslims.
emerge is now we've
Yes.
got the kid getting access to the AK 47 on the web,
That's
all
right.
right, and going out and doing the same damn thing.
Exactly.
Except now, again, this family of first responders, and first up front is the police officers, the Blue Canary. We're trying to stop that stuff. And it's gotten more and more
Wow.
complicated and more audacious.
Yes.
And we succeeded in putting a lot of stoppage to the terrorist guys coming here with good intel and infiltrating their organizations and
Yes.
being able to mitigate that better. But meanwhile, again, how do you stop some layman college student who's
Yes.
gone off the deep end from assaulting kids on this campus?
Exactly.
And no matter how hard you try, it is so difficult unless you get a heads up. Something like 54% of the high school age kids who went out and assaulted, gun assaults, who committed these atrocities, people knew of their idiosyncratic behaviors before they went
Before
out.
they did it.
54%.
Yes.
That means that more than half of these things could have been stopped by saying something.
Uh-huh.
But this is a
No.
16-year-old kid who's listening to another 16-year-old kid said, you know what? I think I'm just going to go out and waste these people. They're really beginning to irritate me. They're bullies and I hate them.
Yes.
And that kid is not assimilating what that young man just said to be the beginning of an assault.
Right.
Okay? They just don't think that way.
Yes.
He's an idiot. Oh, that's him. He's funky. Oh, he's probably stoned.
Yes.
Whatever. Okay?
Exactly.
And so they don't
They don't.
attribute the audacity of the comment
Right.
very well. It's just not in their makeup.
No.
And your question about bringing this to the schools is something that is being espoused, okay? And it's not happening very aggressively, but we're advocating that we put into the, particularly the high school level, is
Yes.
sensitivity training for these kids and psychological profile training for these kids. Is that in minutes? Okay.
Yes.
All right. And I think it's an imperative.
I think so
Okay.
too.
And in my mind, going back to the superintendent saying she didn't want her kids, well, the parent didn't want the kids to be afraid. I don't think the fear is with the kids. I think they're a heck of a lot tougher than the
I
parent.
think so
Okay?
too. I have
All
to
right.
agree with you
Yeah.
on that.
And you give them the real world, they can deal with that.
Yes, they do.
And they do deal with it.
Yeah.
And I think there's stuff is being hidden behind the comfort levels of,
Oh,
we don't want to scare the
yes.
kids.
Ex-
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's the PTA mantra and all that sort of thing. And again, well, if I had the opportunity for them to invite me and or professionals whom I know,
Right.
PTAs is another place where I would like to hang my hat and sit down and have a conversation.
Yes.
Okay. But that's not that simple to do. And they've got to be willing to listen and then be willing to act.
I agree with you.
Okay. And when we left that meeting on March 15th, the concern was that they're not willing to listen and they're not willing to act. What do? We
Yes.
have the message. How do we disseminate it?
Yes.
Okay. So
I am so grateful that you took time out from your busy schedule to be here with me and our BronxNet viewers, because this is a subject that needs to be brought to the forefront more often. More and more
I
and
agree.
more dialogue
Yeah.
has to be.
Yeah.
Because all of the sweetie, nicey, wonderful whoop-de-woo, who's walking on the red carpet, who's having a baby bump, who's got a baby lump, who's got the
Yeah.
running after
Yeah.
this and that. All of those things have their place. But
Sure.
we got to get people to the place where they can wake up out of the coma of complacency.
No question. And those people are here in the Bronx.
Uh-huh.
Go to your local police department. Every one of them has a training officer
Oh, I
specializing,
never knew that.
and also the FBI has special officers that do this thing. I'll share with you, for example, that I am bringing a special agent from the New York office of the FBI to meet with the county legislators in Westchester.
Uh-huh.
Okay? Now, every one of those persons
Is
has
there
a
any way that our viewers could get in contact with you?
well, I think my phone number is on the
Credits?
introduction
In the
credit. Thank
credits?
you. And organizations are more than welcome to call me, and we can ferret out who, where, when, how. Not a problem. It's there.
Okay.
The issue that we have been confronting is getting those guys in front of more people,
Yes.
and then those people acting.
Please,
acting,
viewers,
you know.
you hear what Colonel is saying to us? If you have any members of your PTA or your college or your church boards, please look in the credits at the end of the show and get Colonel Bob's number and set up an appointment, because it's
Sure.
very good to come together,
Absolutely.
dialogue, get more information, because things are going to get worse before they get better.
Preempt. Why do you want to wait and then have to deal with that much pain?
Amen.
Okay, I mean, it's
Amen.
indescribable what's going on right now in the hearts of the
Yes.
families who lost someone and the citizenry of that community.
So true.
And if these folks call me and I can bring them to the cognizant, the persons who are in this area that are trained up for that, they're all out there and they'll go absolutely willingly. That's what they're wanting to do.
Yes.
That's why they learn this stuff.
Uh-huh.
And so, that provides an awful lot. And just think if you do that, the comfort level that you would have when you don't have to keep it in the recesses and not deal with it,
Right.
but bring it forward and say, wow, we've accomplished something.
Exactly.
And that also creates more dialogue between those services, those police, and the community.
Exactly.
And that's one thing that you know bloody well that police try to inculcate is a connection between them. And we hear all the negative. And
Oh, yes.
this part of town is bad and
And
all
this
that
and
nonsense,
that.
okay?
Yes.
I disagree with that. There are bad people everywhere.
Amen.
But where they're collected doesn't mean the people there aren't good. There are a hell of a lot of them that are good.
That's right.
Okay? And so that's what we try to do.
Oh, yes. So I'm just so I hope that you'll come back
Well, that's
and do another part 2.
I'll let you
of
think
this.
about that.
Because
Okay? And
I tell you, I was sitting here. Usually, I have a lot to say, but if you notice, ladies and gentlemen, I didn't have a lot to say because this is so interesting. We're learning, and I know when you come back again, you're going to bring us even more information.
well, yes, because I'm still learning.
Wow.
Okay?
And I like the way you present it. You present things in layman terminology that we can understand what you're talking about,
Sure.
because this is so important. Ladies and gentlemen, I do want to say thank you so much for tuning in to Global Spotlight. And you know, I always remind you, please keep on smiling because the spotlight is always on you.
And may I conclude as well, my dear, that this has been a remarkable opportunity for me.
Yes.
And I think you kind of heard the underlying message
Yes.
that it's tough for me to get the word out. And you've given me that opportunity. So I'm very grateful. And I know the citizens who are watching,
Oh, yeah.
somebody's going to hear this.
Somebody's going to hear
And they're
it.
going to call me. That's a beautiful thing
Yes.
because that's one more step forward.
That's right.
One more step forward. And that will grow and that will grow.
Oh, yes.
And we know we're getting there.
And churches, if you want Colonel Bob to come to your church and speak, please take down his number. It's going to be at the end of the program.
Oh, yeah. Okay. There we go. 914-261-3750. Write that down. And it's Colonel Bob. You don't have to worry about pronouncing my last name.
That's it. Just say Colonel Bob.
914-261-3750. I will look forward to speaking with you and encourage you to pick up the phone and do it. Do it.
That's right.
Roger that. Thank you, dear.
you so much.
That was awesome. Totally awesome.
Please come back again.